Good morning. What will we talk about this morning? Well, I watched this lecture last night on Schopenhauer. Now, Schopenhauer wrote this book, The Will and Representation, I call it. Dr. Suku said it's will and idea, but maybe the same thing. But The World and Will and Representation. But everybody describes Schopenhauer as the most miserable bastard that ever stood in shoe leather. And I reckon all he did was share his misery. And really, I think in order to understand Schopenhauer, you have to have empathy, because if you don't have empathy, I think it's going to be very difficult to understand Schopenhauer. Now, all I can give, of course, is my interpretation of Schopenhauer, and from my position. I remember when I was, at one stage, I was studying cognitive behavioural therapy and Buddhism and some Hinduism in order to try and alleviate my depression. And at the same time, I was depressed in the first place. But this was the reason that it was, depression and anxiety, because obviously one thing was leading to another. A lot of the cause of my depression was fear for the future, I don't want anything, I don't even want to get out of this chair, but what's going to become me? I might as well just sit here and die. And which is sort of, and at the same time, I was studying Buddhism and cognitive behavioural therapy in order to try and break out from this. But the thing then when I was listening to a lecture on Schopenhauer last night, it struck me exactly what my problem was and what I believe his problem was. I used to call Schopenhauer Western Buddhism, and then I realised exactly last night why I call it Western Buddhism. It is Western Buddhism it is Buddhism from a Western perspective, or from a Western interpretation, because it clicked with me last night that Schopenhauer was completely locked in the finite. He was completely depressed, he was such an individual that he found the company of others intolerable. And even though we're rational social beings and strive for connection, if you're depressed, you really don't want any connection, because the biological reasons, you don't have enough zinc in your diet, you're not manufacturing enough oxytocin, you might consider yourself so much of an intellectual that you can't tolerate their company, which is sort of what happened to Dostoevsky and Emerson and Schopenhauer didn't really like people either. He actually hated people. So he was depressed, but he was reading these doctrines, he was reading the Upanishads, and these are all texts that are wrote by people at the complete other end of the spectrum. So he was hopelessly locked in the finite, and he was reading texts of how to resolve his issues and reading texts and an understanding of the world from people who were completely in the infinite. The self is an illusion. They completely lost themselves. This is nirvana. They were seeking to completely lose themselves in the infinite. And there are two opposite ends of the spectrum. How the fuck could you possibly expect a man to understand? And how could you ever have expected me to understand? Because you're reading text from people who perceive life from a completely different perspective altogether. And writing texts on it, and you're trying to fucking make sense. You don't have a fucking hope. Not a fucking hope. All you get is an interpretation such as Schopenhauer's. And then when you try to adhere to these texts, or try to adhere to these doctrines, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, it said, he who does not avoid pain nor seek pleasure. But there has to be an understanding in this. No, you don't avoid pain, you don't seek pleasure, because these things are distractions from the goal. There's distractions from the goal. You keep all your intentions on the goal. In other words, but if pain and pleasure is a part of it, if pleasure is a part of it, fucking happy fucking days. But you don't avoid pain, you don't avoid pleasure, you just hold your line. You hold your line. Asking yourself is what's conducive to the goal. Of course, if you don't have a goal, well, when one does not know to what harbour they are sailing, no wind is favourable. It's very hard to direct your actions towards anything, isn't it? So really the first thing you have to do is cling to a goal, even if that's working on yourself. For example, I have a goal. But the other day I was in the gym and I was asking myself, why the fuck am I even here? Why am I even putting myself through this? Because sure, I don't have any insecurities, and I'm absolutely not answerable to you. And fucking, I said, why am I even bothering my arse with this shit? And then uh, I had to go in and think about it for the day, and I had to say to myself, well, this is for me, because I always used to say the bodybuilding is for me, and the bodybuilding is not for you or anybody else. I said the bodybuilding is for me to focus on myself, to think about myself. Otherwise, you get hopelessly lost in the infinite, which is in ye, to be honest. And thinking about doing philosophy and everything else, well, that is in my interest, but yeah, but at the same time, you have to try and seek to understand others as well. You have to seek to understand others as well. Like for example, there was a chap. Yeah, you have to seek to understand others as well. And I tell you the truth, I couldn't understand others until I heard, like, this is others that listen to other spiritual leaders. Now I don't know if they have a grasp on all this, or if they're just regurgitating shite. That's hard to tell. That's hard to tell for me. I came to the conclusion last night that the Pope is not enlightened either, because he was out last night crying about the war in Ukraine. Well, this was yesterday, crying about the war in Ukraine, and I just said to myself, that's not enlightenment, because enlightenment is where Dostoevsky was. It's right on the dividing line. The dividing line between finite and infinite, the dividing line between good and evil, the dividing line, and you use both sides of the track as necessary. But what people try to push is this, and the Buddhists in particular, but this is why I call it a philosophy for the week, they push this idea that lose yourself completely in the infinite, lose yourself completely in the infinite. And this is escapism of the highest order. And that's why I don't want to escape from here. I'm having a fucking amazing time. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. Like you take Schopenhauer, hopelessly locked the infinite and stuck here forever, like stuck in this shit, and he has a very, very pessimistic view of life. But it's like the other day when your man says to me, oh yeah, acceptance. I says, yeah, what's acceptance? And he says, as is, what it is, what it is. Now he's turning back around on me. But these things, I've accepted these things a long time ago. I accept things as is. But you see, if there's just acceptance, and you just say to yourself, oh yes, oh that's terrible, oh that's wrong, oh he's after killing your man, that's wrong. That's imposing your morality on it, but accepting it's wrong, but accepting it's the way of the world. But this shit's going to depress the shit out of you. Like, it's going to depress the shit out of you. Like, if you're accepted that you're stuck in the finite, you've accepted that you're miserable, you've accepted that you're depressed, you've accepted everything. That's hands up there. I'm depressed, I'm miserable, life is shit, I'm stuck here in this shell, and I may just wait to die. You're going to be fucking miserable. But really, then, when you pick the likes of Stoicism, which is what happened with me, I found Stoicism. You learn that. But if you let them teach you Stoicism, like Stoicism and ethical doctrine, this won't do anything for you. It'll do absolutely fuck all for you, because you're still trying to stay in the present. And it's bullshit. Like, why should I stay here? This is bullshit, absolutely bullshit. I even have this seen 5,000 times. Why would I even stay here? Like, so you just go back either past or future when you're sitting here. In other words, you're dwelling about me, myself, and I. But you go back into locked in the finite. In the finite. And what I'm saying is, until you start to get an understanding of life, and you start to learn some philosophy, that you actually have some shit to think about, and you have to figure out life. And even though now, after last night, I've accepted like that this is a process. This is not going to just happen from one thing. But the whole thing is the start of, as I say, of getting off that hamster wheel. The start of getting off that hamster wheel is, how can I get off this hamster wheel? Why am I suffering? And that's why I asked myself this recently as well. I said to myself, why am I suffering? Well, first of all, am I depressed? And I said, Jesus, this is an interesting experience. I believe I am depressed. And so I went back to the philosophy, which I had which I had given up because I thought I reached a culmination point. In other words, I thought I knew everything. But well, I thought I knew everything there was to know. Well, maybe I didn't even think I knew everything, but I wasn't getting any new arguments until I actually found something new about. I did a module on the hypocrisy of human nature as a consequence of hypocrisy in human nature as a consequence of a paradoxical universe. And then all the lectures changed and everything changed and all my understanding changed. So now I have to go and watch them all again. Because it's like when I read Crime and Punishment. Like, I imposed my morality upon it, hanging out of it. And now if I go and read it again, it's boom, like boom. But if you read it again, just straight after you read it, without something changing, then your perspective won't change. It's just the same shit. But even though, like, even like as I say in life, only the concept changed, only the concept changed. Like I was watching Paddy Pimblett yesterday. I was only like Paddy Pimblett, a UFC thing, and he said, "You do nothing, you do nothing, you do nothing." And I said, "Mate, you're only ripping off Conor McGregor, number one, and number two, this is WWF shit, mate. I've seen this when I was 7 years old, like." You've seen this when you're 7 years old, and then you've seen this concept, you've seen this concept, you've seen this concept. So this concept that might be entertaining everybody else, or might be entertaining everybody else, man, I've seen this theatre, like I've seen this theatre. But then when you start to look at the hypocrisy in nature, all this, and you start to see these things differently. You start to see these things differently because you're looking at it and you're saying, well, you don't even exist, mate. You don't even exist. You're just playing your role. You don't even exist. And your whole perception changes, and then it becomes the most amazing theatre, like the most amazing theatre. Like I was going to turn off Facebook. And I said to myself, but sure, then I'm no better than the Buddhist that I'm always giving out about, because I'm just want to shelter myself. I just want to shelter myself. And I say, oh, close the doors. We don't want to know about everything out there. We don't want to know about the war. We don't want to know about any of the atrocities. We don't want to know any of that shit. But it's amazing theatre. Like, it's amazing theatre, It's just all amazing theatre, but the first thing you have to do is you have to change your perspective on death. And that's why I asked the fella the other day, are you afraid to die? A Taoist fella here. I asked him, are you afraid to die? And he says, no, I'm not afraid to die. And I said, well, why are you not afraid to die? Do you have an understanding of life? Do you have an understanding of death? Have you looked into this? Have you thought about this? Have you contemplated your own death? And he says, yes, I've done all that. And then when I said about somebody being in their right to kill thousands of people, I said, you impose your morality upon it. You say that's an awful thing, that shouldn't have happened, that shouldn't have been done. I said, what happened to your perspective of death that you're applying to yourself? Well, your understanding of death goes completely out the fucking window, and you come along with your morality and impose that on it instead. But as I said, why don't you pose the understanding of death that you're using to enjoy your life, which you say, why do you not just see it through those eyes? Do you understand? That you understand that this is just a transformation to the universe. Well, like, this is just a stage. Life is theatre, this is just a stage. And when your fucking moment is over, get off. Just get off the stage. Till your time is up, get off. Do you understand? And then when you have this experience, then you just say, when your time has come to leave the stage, everything is beautiful, thank you for my experience. It's that simple. Everything was beautiful, thank you for my experience. And no one knows when that is, and no one knows how that is. But that's the first perspective that's going to change your life. Good morning.